Why do we get bored?
This is one of the most important questions to discuss because boredom is a privilege unique to humans. No other animal has this capability. Why do humans have the capacity for boredom? It is a byproduct of intelligence. There's nothing wrong with it. Only fools or those who have attained enlightenment never feel bored, but the enlightened are very few and far between. The majority of humanity, those lying between the boundaries of foolishness and enlightenment, will at times feel bored, more or less. Boredom means you are smart enough to see that your life is meaningless, that continuing to live is futile, not yielding anything. Life is like trying to write your name on water, not even on sand, because if it were on sand, it might be preserved for a while before the wind sweeps everything away. Writing on water means everything disappears as soon as it appears, instantly, leaving nothing behind, not even a wisp of smoke. Chapter 1. What is the truth about suffering? How many billions of people have lived on Earth? What do they leave behind after death? They are just like you. They do everything like you do, think thoughts, dream dreams, and hold ideals just like you. And they strive with all their might to create, to satisfy, to be content. But what do they leave behind? Whether they achieve all those things or not makes no difference. The important thing is, what difference will you make? If you cannot make a difference, it means your life is not creative. To be creative means to make a difference with your presence, not to abandon the world in the state it was when you arrived at it. Your mark will exist on it. You may leave, but what you create will continue to influence from one generation to the next. Those who have lived all ponder on their lives. What does it mean? Is it merely about growing up? Animals do not know boredom because no animal is concerned with meaning. No animal cares about creation. A buffalo grazing is as content as a sage. It's not even aware of its contentment. That's the difference. Just look at a buffalo grazing and you can see the difference between humans and animals. A person can sit on a throne or be a beggar. They are no different, but both are deeply concerned about why they are here, for what purpose. Is it mere coincidence or a design of fate? This question remains unanswered, hence the boredom arises. You can't find satisfaction, peace, or meaning in anything. You see each day passing by and death getting closer and closer. And life brings no benefit at all. You still end up empty-handed. Strangely, when a child is born, its hands are clenched as though it's bringing something into this world. When a person dies, their hands are open. Everything has gone. There's nothing left to hold, so there's no need to clench anymore. No one dies with clenched fists, and no baby is born with open hands. But metaphorically, this is a beautiful image. I speak of it as a metaphor. Every child is born with a desire for greatness. Every child is born with hopes, aspirations, desires, and the belief that all these will become reality, that their dreams will not just remain dreams, but will materialize. To me, that is the metaphor of the child's clenched hands. It arrives with a treasure, a secret. It doesn't come without a message. The child is born with a mission to fulfill. It carries a destiny. Therefore, children do not feel boredom. They might cry, they might laugh, but we cannot see them bored. They have not yet realized that life is not always as desired. They have not experienced that life is not as dreamed. This requires a bit of maturity, a bit of experience. And the smarter the child, the sooner it feels boredom. The less intelligent might feel it a bit later, obviously, because to realize life is meaningless, one needs a sharp intellect. The story of OSHO, the Indian mystic and spiritual teacher. OSHO, do you ever feel bored? Not now, but I don't think any of you could have felt as bored as I did during the first 21 years of my life. Perhaps I've already met my quota of boredom. Everything has its limits. My parents were quite perplexed. I never participated in any game. If I jest about football today, it's not something new. I have mocked every game for as long as I can remember. I never engaged in any game, any playground. My teachers and parents were troubled by this. What kind of child are you? What are you doing? Go outside and play. I told them, other parents tell their children to come inside and study, but you're telling me to go out and play. Who's the abnormal one here? Am I weird or are you? I'm not interested in playing. I don't see any benefit in it. It's just a waste of time. Those who have a lot of time might afford to waste it. I don't have that much. Since the day my grandfather passed away, death has been my companion. I was just 7 years old at the time. He died in my arms. My grandparents lived in a remote village and I had lived with them. They had only one child, my mother. When she gave birth to me, she was very young, but she had to take on the responsibility of her husband's family because my paternal grandmother had died when I was 2. My father's siblings were too young or too immature. My mother was also very young, but she had to manage the entire household. Therefore, my grandparents decided to take care of me to give her some relief. I could be more free and they could give me more attention. My mother would have one less burden, allowing her to care for her husband's family, where she played the most significant role, even though she was just a young girl at the time. The village wasn't too far, just about 16 miles away, but there were no roads, no trains passing through. When my grandfather became ill, the only doctor in the village said, "This situation is beyond my capabilities. Quickly take him to a hospital." We tried to take him by bullock cart because there was no other means. Those 16 miles felt like thousands because he was dying. I could feel his pulse weakening. He couldn't even open his eyes. He started to breathe differently, stopped talking. I felt death was very close. He lay in my arms because my grandmother was so overwhelmed with grief that she couldn't stop crying. I told her, "Please, for me. I'm an only child, now taking care of a dying person and also taking care of you. My grandparents took me in to care for. Isn't this strange?" "At least don't cry, grandmother. If you cry, how can I keep myself from crying? I'm not crying so you can calm down." But she couldn't do it. I continued to observe by all possible means to see if he was still alive or had gone, and I saw him fading away. By the time we got to my father, he had passed. After that, death became a constant companion of mine. That day I also died because something became certain. Whether you live 7 years or 70, you're still going to die. My grandfather was 70 that year. He was a rare kind of man. I could never catch him lying, breaking a promise, or even judging someone harshly. My grandfather was a good and always likable man, eager to help everyone. Anyone who came to him for help, he would assist. He would give them money. If they borrowed and gave him something as collateral, he would never accept. He said, "I don't know what might happen. I might die tomorrow. Then who will return these collaterals to you? Take the money. If you can repay it, good. If you can't, don't worry about it. I have enough money." He never made anyone sign to prove they had borrowed money. I said, "You should have them sign that they've borrowed money from you." He replied, "It's not a debt, it's their money. They might think of it as a debt, but not me. If they can repay it, good. If they can't, I lose nothing because I never expect to be repaid. They are too poor. How could they possibly repay?" Chapter 2. Seeking Truth? Why are humans indifferent? The kind, beautiful, good-hearted man has departed. What was the meaning of his life? This is a question I always ponder. What meaning? What did he gain? He lived kindly for 70 years, but what did it mean? It simply ended, leaving no trace. His death stressed me greatly. I had been stressed even before he died. At the age of 4, I began to think about the measures people take to postpone death. I didn't believe we could do that. I started asking my grandfather, and he replied, "Those questions. You have your whole life ahead. No need to rush. You're too young." I've seen children die in the village. They didn't get to ask such questions. They died without knowing the answers. Can you guarantee me that I won't die tomorrow or the day after? Can you assure me that I will only die after I know the answers? I can't, because death is not in my hands, nor is life. Then, I said, you shouldn't suggest I delay. I want the answers now. If you know, then say you know and give me the answers. If not, you don't need to feel embarrassed about your lack of knowledge. At that moment, he realized there was no way to substitute talking with me. Either you have to admit you know, but that's not easy. Then you have to delve into the details of the issue, and you can't lie to me. He began to accept his limitations that he didn't know. I said, "You're old and you'll die soon. What have you done in your life? When you die, you'll have nothing but ignorance left in your hands. You go to the temple. I asked you why you have to go. What do you get from there? You've been worshiping all your life, and you always try to convince me to go with you." That temple was built by my grandfather himself. One day, he admitted the truth because he had built it. If I don't go there, then who will? But in front of you, I have to admit that it's indeed pointless. I've worshipped all my life and got nothing in return. Try something else. Don't die in contemplation. Die with answers. But he passed away with the question still unanswered. The last time, he said to me, "You're right. Postponing is not the right thing to do. I'm dying with the questions of life. So remember, everything I told you was wrong. You were right. Don't postpone. If you doubt something, try to find the answers as soon as possible." Why do people engage in entertainment? There are 1,001 questions that children ask you, and you're only a coward if you dare not admit your ignorance. You continue to give them untrue answers. Someone asked me this: why don't humans care about seeking the truth? The answer is not too far. Even posing a question about truth indicates you're serious. It means you're leaving behind a world just for entertainment. You leave behind the world that keeps people busy, and you're moving towards the opposite of entertainment. That's boredom. Why do people engage in entertainment? Simply to beat boredom. Just see what happens when you have to stay home alone for just one day. You start doing odd things. You turn the radio on, then off, then the TV on. You don't really enjoy it, but what else is there to do? When you're home alone, boredom begins to engulf you. You pick up the phone to call friends. Do you want to come over, or I can come to yours? Or let's meet at Zorba the Buddha, a concept introduced by OSHO in his lectures in 1978, meaning the new humanity. That friend is bored. You're bored. It's interesting when bored people start entertaining each other. As far as I see, this is completely against arithmetic. I'm not good at arithmetic, but one thing I understand clearly: when two bored people meet, their boredom is doubled. Chapter 3. What happens to every marriage in the world? Everyone knows those two are lonely and bored. They start entertaining each other, and immediately they're under the illusion that life will be more interesting and colorful together. But that can only happen when you meet a girl or boy on the beach, waiting 23 hours just for an hour's meeting. Stolen kisses are very sweet. Otherwise, how could a kiss be sweet? It's because they are stolen that they're sweet. I don't see how kisses can taste sweet, especially French kisses. If French kisses were sweet, the French would all have diabetes, too much sweetness. But there's no sugar in them, so diabetics can kiss without fear. However, stealing kisses means you're creating a small world of your own sweetness. But when you meet, you both prepare meticulously, ready. You bathe, she bathes, and at least spend 3 hours in front of the mirror trying all sorts of perfumes or colognes, lip care products, and whatnot. And then you date for a few minutes or an hour. Of course, you're both far from each other. Only personalities wearing masks meet. You exchange painted smiles. The most astonishing thing is, you know you're not what you're pretending to be, she does too, yet both believe that the other is the person they're trying to portray. This is incredibly hard to believe. Then, of course, they want to be together. If that hour is sweet, if that hour is so magical that boredom disappears, they start fantasizing about how wonderful it would be to be together 24 hours. The illusion persists throughout history, and I don't see any potential for it ending in the future. If it stops, it's truly significant and meaningful, giving you a chance to understand boredom. The sooner you realize, the better. By understanding boredom, you can overcome it. By avoiding it, you will continue to be trapped in it. Marriage is one way to avoid, just like other solutions. But when you are together all day, how long can you pretend? Pretending requires effort and energy. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, and the honeymoon ends, masks fall. You don't even care about it falling because the girl's mask does too. But the marriage is already on the brink. The honeymoon hasn't even started, the lights are still on. Every honeymoon ends similarly, more or less. Once you understand the woman, her philosophy, her conditions, once she understands you, your love habits, tantrums, breath, and sweat, you will find yourselves making each other bored as when both were single and alone. Before, at least you were just lonely and bored. Now you're bored with someone else by your side, making you even more bored. Then, couples continue their happily ever after life. That's how every story, every movie ends. And then they lived happily ever after. After that, they don't live at all. They just slowly die every day. But humanity's folly is not seeing the real problem. You might think, this person has ruined my life, or maybe we're not meant for each other. As if somewhere, there are some other men or women who are truly meant for you. Excuse me, but nobody really belongs to you. You were born alone and you have to accept loneliness. The sooner you realize, the better. But loneliness leads to boredom because there's nothing entertaining, nothing interesting. Yes, for 21 years I was bored to death. Not only was I bored, but I also made everyone I came into contact with utterly bored. My father would immediately start rummaging through his pile of books. I could see him sitting in the shop, not looking at the books, but when I walked in, he would pick up a book and start reading. Once I asked, "Why do you have to pretend to be busy when you have nothing to do? I've seen it. You're just sitting there. Now, there are no customers, and you're not reading the book. So, why do you have to pick it up and look at it?" He replied, "Can't I even allow myself to do something to avoid you? Go play somewhere else. You always bring some trouble. I have enough troubles already. Deal with your own story." My teacher wouldn't let me raise my hand to speak. I don't know about other countries, but in India, if you want to speak, you have to raise your hand. My solution was to raise my arm before the teacher even entered. He hadn't even sat down and my hand was already up. He would say, "What is it? At least wait for me to sit down. What's the rush? Everything is urgent. Why should I waste time? When you start teaching, you force me to put my hand down because you are lecturing and I shouldn't interrupt." The teachers would immediately write something on the board to turn their back on me, but I wasn't one to give up so easily. I'd keep slamming my book until they turned around. I said, "You can't avoid me like that. I've raised my hand and I have a question." Then I'd fire off a series of questions. The teacher would answer, "That question isn't within the scope of our subject." It's not a question about the subject matter. Life can't be divided into subjects. The curriculum in school might be divided, but life isn't. When I enter a history class, I'm still me. When I enter a geography class, I'm still me. I enter every class with the same problem. I don't care what subject you're teaching. I'm only interested in my question, and my question isn't just mine, it's yours too. It's what keeps you up at night. Such simple questions as, what's the meaning of your life? Why are you alive? And then those teachers would say, do you want us to commit suicide? I don't object, but before you commit suicide, you'll have to tell me why you want to. What do you see the benefit in? You have to answer this question for me. So if suicide is beneficial to you, the same question applies. Why live? Why die? And if you can't answer such a simple question, what can you do? You try to teach me history about Alexander the Great, but you don't understand anything about yourself, not even your own life. You want to teach me about religion, about Krishna and Rama, but you don't understand the principles of your own life, where you got them from. Do you even recognize the origin of these things and where are you going? Chapter 4. Boredom. It's your shadow. Where do you plan to escape? Once you start doubting, everything can become significant questions. And if you're surrounded by questions without answers from anywhere, you'll feel betrayed by existence, by your parents, by your teachers, and by the priests you follow, because there are no answers and yet you must live, for suicide is considered a sin. What a strange world we live in. Just the other day, the news spoke of a man who died near the White House in Washington, starving, freezing. He was found next to the White House wall. When they found his body in the morning, they discovered he was a World War II veteran. Can you believe it? They gave him all the honors once reserved for a soldier. When alive, he was hungry and did not have enough clothes to survive the winter cold. No one cared. In death, with great respect, the military honors, he was welcomed. What kind of world are we living in? A person lives without any significance while alive and upon death receives great honor. A well-known and clearly established truth is that anyone with a bit of intelligence will, at least once in their lifetime, definitely at least once, contemplate suicide. Why? Because life seems too bland. Marriages fall apart. Religion fails. Politics leads nowhere. You could have all the money in the world, but still be as poor as ever. Boredom is something very fundamental. It's part of not accepting solitude. It's part of not being able to enjoy one's own company. This society teaches you to avoid, to keep running, not to look back, but boredom follows you like a shadow. It is your shadow. Where do you plan to escape? You can't evade it. Maybe for a moment you can drown it in alcohol, but the next day it returns, and everything's worse. Then you feel sick. You endure it, then continue drinking despite knowing the sickness will come again. But at least for a few hours, you manage to escape. A drunk person doesn't know boredom. You can go to a bar and meet drunks. They are merry and enjoy themselves, yelling, fighting, doing everything, but they shine. You won't see them suffering. The story of a man who married 8 times. Not strange at all. When a marriage falls apart, people start divorcing and looking for another partner. I once heard about a person from California. Oh yes, I use the term Californiac because you can only find such people in California. Whoever named this part of the world California must have had Californiac in mind. A Californiac married 8 times. Nothing surprising in America. This man married 8 times, and each time he realized he ended the marriage with the same type of woman. He must have been a bit rational. He pondered and thought, this is strange. But it's not strange at all. It's simple psychology. You fall for a girl. You have certain ideals about beauty, appearance, aesthetics, and that woman meets your expectations of a suitable life partner, as though the world really had an ideal husband-wife template. But you're mistaken. There is no ideal husband or wife in this world unless someone like me can navigate a marriage between two people. Because when you choose a woman, you forget that you have a subconscious standard. Why do you suddenly choose one particular woman among millions? It's because she matches your desire for an ideal wife. Now you divorce after 3 months because, while her appearance matches, she is not just her appearance. It's meaningless. She also has a personality entirely hidden inside that you fail to see. You only see her exterior, you can't see her inner self, where she truly expresses her true ego, and she only sees your exterior. It's like seeing a fence and concluding that this is the dream house. You only see the fence surrounding the house, not even clearly seeing its walls, let alone the rooms inside. What if there are scorpions or snakes inside, witches or demons? One cannot know what's inside, only the fence looks appealing. But you can't live outside the fence. You marry to actually step into the house, and when you enter someone else's house, it's horrible because you chose each other to dispel boredom, not for joy. You didn't choose to share, but to get something in return. The woman also chose to get something because she's too empty. So two beggars are choosing each other, thinking the other is the emperor. Once you get closer, the dream shatters. You might divorce that woman, but how do you choose another? You'll choose again according to the same old formula, which is fixed in your subconscious. You might not be aware of it. An old formula will make you find a similar woman again. You can't find someone different. It's almost like marrying the same person. And that's what happened, and why I'm telling you this story. That Californian married 8 wives. When he got to the 8th wife, after 2 days, he realized he had had this type of wife before. It took him 2 days to recognize this truth. They were all strikingly similar, almost exact replicas. And the woman hadn't yet realized that this man was just like the others. Only when he pointed it out did she have her revelation. He exclaimed, "My God, what have we done? Let's stay together for 2 or 3 months and then get a divorce." Wherever divorce becomes a fashionable trend, you're bound to realize that you're always choosing a type of person. Perhaps you're doing nothing but marrying a Hindu wife over and over. You'll run into unnecessary trouble if you keep changing spouses. Homes, jobs, everything has to be taken to court. Hindus had figured out long before it became senseless. You're choosing the same type of woman, she's choosing the same type of husband. So why not choose once and for all? We'll be together for a lifetime, making each other miserable. What's the point of changing? At least we'll become accustomed to each other's torture. Perhaps we might even grow to love it. One just needs a bit of practice, and one begins to learn to love anything and build a life together. I think Hindus have some understanding about this. Why practice living together? It's best to find a companion you already understand well and who understands you. There's no need to start everything from ABC. You could start in a different way. In India, there's nothing like a honeymoon, because this woman has been your wife for many lifetimes and she will continue to be your wife in many more lifetimes. So why waste time and money on a honeymoon? People do things simply because they can forget themselves. For the moment they remember themselves is so bland. Chapter 5. You'll be surprised by living with boredom. And this entire society, every culture teaches you to run from yourself as quickly and as far as possible. I too was once bored, but I acted differently. I decided to live with my boredom. I didn't avoid it because avoidance doesn't help. You would be surprised how I chose to live with my own boredom. My family, my friends began to think I was insane because I didn't participate in any form of entertainment. I didn't go on outings. I like to lie down on the floor and look up at the ceiling for hours on end, as blandly as possible. You don't know what ceilings in India are like. You can't imagine anything uglier. They're just ugly beams covered with mud, spider webs, rats running wildly across the beams, and I just lay on the floor observing this busy scene. Enjoy it, don't compare. I decided to live with the boredom no matter how intense it was. If this is how nature wants me to be alone, so be it. Let nature take its course. But something strange happened when I decided to live in the boredom. One day, it disappeared. I was left alone, but not lonely, and since then, it has not come back. At this moment, I almost forget what boredom feels like. You asked, and I tried to answer you, but my own experience has faded a lot. I've lost the trace of those memories. In fact, I can describe them, but I can't recall them. These two terms will help you understand better: factual memory and psychological memory. For example, if you insulted me 30 years ago and I was very angry, I can remember that. That's factual memory. But to get as angry again, to make that insult live again, is no longer memory but a present living experience. That's psychological memory. I've lost the psychological traces of all memories. I can talk about it, but I can't relive it. My life is utterly solitary. It would seem strange because I've lived 30 years of my life among crowds. But I was alone in the crowd. I was there, but alone. Even amidst a crowd, I felt no different than sitting alone in a room. My solitude persisted. It couldn't be invaded. I live in a room nearly all day. My life is as routine as possible. I've arranged everything meticulously to create blandness around me. I don't allow anything to make me evade loneliness. In the morning, I wake up at a specific time. And do you know what I do first? Even Vivek doesn't know. First, I pinch myself to see if I'm alive or dead. Only after pinching myself and being sure that I'm alive do I press the button to call Vivek to bring in tea. The purpose of the button is because if I'm not there, what's the point of pressing it? If so, she wouldn't need to get up and make tea anymore. So first I have to make sure I'm still alive. Then I press the button for her to bring in the tea. How is my tea made? No milk, no sugar, just hot water and tea leaves. I enjoy it this way because it's the purest taste of tea. Sugar and milk would ruin its original flavor. Everything is arranged the same way every day. I spend half an hour in the bathroom, then swim for half an hour in the pool. Probably it's the hottest swimming pool in the world, 99 degrees F, about 37 degrees C. You can entirely prepare breakfast in 20 minutes if you're a skilled chef. I don't have a small pool. It's a standard Olympic-size pool. You know, I'm a simple guy. I'm satisfied with whatever, happy with simplicity, but it has to be the best. Sheila asked me, "What do you do with that Olympic standard pool?" I said, "It's not about being Olympic standard, it's about it being that size. I can't jump into a smaller pool." Half an hour soaking in hot water, then the next half hour in cold water. You can't stay in such cold water for more than 2 minutes. But after soaking in 99 degree F water, it's wonderful to plunge into cold water. Moving from extreme hot to cold is like pinching myself again. The first time is physical, the next is spiritual, and I'm sure I'm alive and well, at least for today. Vivek brings me breakfast, a wonderful breakfast, just a glass of juice, the same every day. Others might find it repetitive, but I don't because I don't compare. Yesterday is gone, and tomorrow hasn't arrived, so I don't compare. Vivek asks me, "Do you really look forward to eating the same food every day?" Because yesterday I also said I was excited when she asked, "Do you really enjoy it that much?" I replied, "I always enjoy the same type of juice, the same food, because the problem only arises when you start comparing. When you begin to think that for 10 years you've been having the same type of juice, fear manifests in the form, 'Oh, what am I doing?' But I don't feel bored. I've abandoned the habit of comparison. I carry no psychological memories with me. I leave every moment behind, and I enjoy the same things forever." She seemed worried about what I said. She consulted with my personal doctor, Devaraj, and asked, "Should we change OSHO's diet?" I said, "No, I won't allow you to change it. I'm settled with it and a change would trouble me. I don't get bored with those meals. It's unbelievable, but I've learned something. If you can enjoy solitude, you can enjoy anything. And if you can't enjoy solitude, you can't truly enjoy anything. That's a fundamental principle." People always strive to be original because everyone is trying to come up with new ideas. They don't repeat the same old things. Repeating the same old things becomes boring. There are two ways to escape this condition. Don't repeat the old things, but that's impossible because life consists of little details. You have to brush your teeth every day. How many ways to brush your teeth can you come up with? I don't think you can find many. According to my dentist, there's only one correct way. You might find several incorrect methods, but correct is just one. If you start getting bored with it, every morning will begin with a sense of dreariness. Enjoy it. Don't compare. What's there to compare? If you don't compare, repetition ceases to exist. If you do compare, it's the epitome of repetition. You'll have to shower, and showering is the same every day. You put on clothes and go about your work. Everything is almost the same, more or less. If you try to make everything new to be creative, you drive yourself insane. Conclusion: nothing is old, everything is new. In life, you can't always be creative. From the moment I began to enjoy my own company, all psychological memories began to fall away like daily dust. Everything is fresh, different because it's not compared to the past. When I look at you, I never feel you are the old you. Not for a moment, because with 24 hours gone, you've grown 24 hours older. Too much water has flowed down the Ganges. It's no longer the old water. You've lived through too many lives. You're not the old person. Yes, the face may be similar, but it's not completely the same. Buddha once said, "Life is like a flame. You light a candle in the night and the candle burns all night. You might see that the flame seems unchanged, but it's not the previous flame at all. The flame continuously burns into smoke, and another flame is born. The old flame disappears, and a new flame appears. But the disappearance of the old and the appearance of the new happens so swiftly that you cannot see the gap between them. That's why you think it's the same flame. In the morning, when you blow out the candle, never think that you are blowing out the same candle that you lit the night before. It's not. In the span of 12 hours, the flame has continuously changed. It is constant change. Life is like that. Everything is like that. Always changing, moving. Nothing remains the same for 2 consecutive moments, once you understand that. But this understanding has to be experienced through your own life's flame. When you see the flame of your life as a flow, a ceaseless motion, a continuous entity, then everything around it will always be new, perhaps similar, but entirely new. The moment you can sense your own newness and the newness of everything around you, boredom will disappear. Animals don't know boredom, fools don't know boredom because they don't have the intelligence to realize it. Enlightened people don't know boredom because they can see their entire being, that it is an endlessly renewing newness, that dust does not gather in one place, that the mirror is always clear and everything reflecting in your mind is always new. The tree outside your house will not be the same as it was in the morning. Don't treat the tree as if it's always the same. New leaves grow, old leaves fall, new flowers bloom, old flowers wither. Change is the only ever-present phenomenon. Nothing else is permanent except change. So what is there to be bored about? But it's not just about understanding with intellect. It has to come from your own experience of the flame. You are the flame that is constantly changing. Every passing second, a new flame is born, and the old flame turns to smoke. Once solitude becomes an endlessly renewing novelty, everything you do is creative, different, new, and you cannot feel dull. I once tried to feel boredom, to see what it was like, but I must confess, I couldn't do it. I tried in every possible way, but everything was new to me. What could I do? Where do we get old things from? Nothing is old, everything is new. But let this understanding come from deep experiences within you about solitude.